Welcome to the Productive Life podcast hosted by me, Megan Minns. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to be more productive in their business and their personal life. Because as a business owner, your business and personal life are connected, and we can't talk about one without talking about the other. Each week, you'll learn about productivity, organization, personal development, self-care, business strategies, and more. And now, let's get started. Hi, thank you so much for coming to this week's episode of the Productive Life podcast. I am Megan Minns, and I'm so excited to be joined by my very own marketing assistant, Sam. Sam, do you want to say hi?
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Yeah. Sam's been with me since February, right, of 2020. And Sam has been our marketing assistant. She is technically a contractor, but she is amazing. And she's a huge part of what we do behind the scenes over at Megan Minns. And we are talking all about how we do content marketing here at our company. So you are listening to this. Maybe you're watching us live on Facebook, you're listening on YouTube or the podcast, and you probably see all of Sam's work on a weekly basis. You're seeing this episode right now, you see the Instagram posts, you see our emails, and sometimes it can be a big mystery on how all of that actually comes together. So that's really what we wanted to demystify today. We want to go really nitty-gritty on who does what, the order we go, how it all comes together, so that hopefully you can take some valuable tips and insights away from this conversation and apply this into your business. If you're not doing any type of content marketing yet in your business, it is a great way to not only build your email list, but also truly build a community, establish yourself as a real expert in what you're an expert in, and grow your business overall. I love content marketing, but I always am very cautious and always encourage other people to be cautious about getting on the content creation hamster wheel. Content marketing is amazing, but we don't want to get stuck in only creating free content. We want to make sure you always have time in your week and in your day to focus on revenue generating activities over free content. So we have to be super careful with what we do for free content, how we set up our systems and processes. And I like to be super transparent. I have Sam. Sam does the bulk of our content, as you'll see. And so what we do may not work perfectly for you as a solopreneur, and that is completely okay. I haven't been doing it to this degree in my entire business until I had Sam. And so we will help you, hopefully give you some tips along the way, how you can tweak this to work for you. And if you do have a team, then what we do could work really well for you as well. So that's what we're going to be sharing, how we do this in a way where the two of us are the ones really involved in content. And we are doing it in a way that feels really scalable for us, sustainable for our team, and doesn't trap us into where all we do is content. Because even with Sam, she has a lot of other responsibilities on the team besides just content. So we've been able to find a way where she can get that done. We can be consistent without it consuming everything. So we'll be talking about the process we do for content for the weekly live show, the podcast, the YouTube, the blog, Instagram, and email. All of that is really one big connected process for us. So that's where we're going to jump in. So I'm going to kick it off a little bit with an overview, just for those of you who maybe aren't sure what the end result really looks like over here. That way you kind of see how it all comes together and you understand when we're talking about these pieces, how it comes together. So what we are doing right now, as we record this, is a live stream. So I didn't always record the podcast as a live stream format, but that's what we've been doing for, I think this is our 10th episode. That's technically a live stream. So we haven't always done it this way, but it's been working really well for us now. And I'll go into more detail on that in just a second. But basically every Thursday, almost every Thursday, if I'm sick or out of town, we give ourselves grace there. But we start the entire process with a live stream on Thursday that we do on Facebook in our Facebook communities. So it starts there, and that one piece of content is then repurposed into a podcast episode that you can actually listen to on your podcast player, a YouTube video that gets published to our channel, a blog post on our website, and then multiple Instagram posts, Instagram stories, as well as a weekly newsletter. So we're really creating one piece of content and turning it into multiple pieces of content. And this repurposing is key to why what we do is pretty scalable and sustainable for us, because that means I get to show up for about 30 minutes once a week, teach live, which I love to do, maybe spend 5 to 15 minutes writing an email, and then my piece of the puzzle is done. So everything that happens after that is Sam. And that's why we're going to be going into more detail, because Sam's the one executing that, not me. So she can speak to her process much better than I can. And then again, just so we can see the big picture, Sam spends about 1 week focused on each episode. So I go live at the end of the week. The whole following next week is when Sam does her thing. And then the following Tuesday is when it gets fully repurposed and published. And like I said just a few minutes ago, delegating and repurposing is key for us in our current strategy. We're taking one piece of content, repurposing it in a variety of ways so that we can leverage it and not just create something and move on to the next thing. And it's also really benefited Sam and I, because Sam does so much within marketing with our company. If you've ever worked with a contractor or a teammate and struggled to have them find your voice and be able to write for you, this process has really allowed Sam and I to, well, really Sam, to understand my communication style really, really quickly, because she's a part of this process. She's listening to it every single week. So when it comes to doing the Instagram captions or writing a blog post copy, she can get very familiar with my voice very quickly, because she's got that source video that she's taking from. So it really, really helps. And if you're a solopreneur, we'll tweak this to work for you. Now, I do want to speak very honestly to some of the cons and the pros of doing it as a weekly live show and then repurposing it. Because if you've listened to the podcast for a long time, or you followed me, I'm a big proponent of batching. And our current process is not batching. We are not batching the podcast right now. If you're a solopreneur, I still think batching is an incredible approach. So I like to be super transparent that the live stream method really isn't batching. So that means that every single week I am thinking about free content. Even if I've planned it in advance, I'm doing some type of outlining, I'm showing up and doing the live stream. So I am thinking about content every week, which may not be sustainable for all business owners. For me, it not only is sustainable because I have help, but I've also found that by doing this, it really helps me continue to practice using my voice. This was something that I've noticed about myself since I've been in business for years, is that if I stop using my voice, whether that's Instagram stories or creating free content, sometimes it creates like this creative blockage for me where it becomes really hard to start using my voice again. So I've actually really enjoyed thinking about it on a weekly basis. It allows me to continue to listen to my audience, respond quickly, and get out of the habit of overthinking when I needed to plan 6 episodes at a time. So it's a con in general that you can't batch this way, but I think it also plays to a lot of my strengths and things that help me in the long run. Another con about the live stream method is that it is I think it's best done with a team member. You could do it without one, but I would simplify the process a lot. So if you really want to do it to the extent we are, I would recommend having a VA or a contractor to help you. And I want to make sure that, again, doing this live, the other con is that we can't always be perfectly consistent because life happens. If I am sick, I am a very big self-care. Wellness is more important. So I give myself permission to skip a live stream, but I know in the long run, it's better to not. And if you weren't doing the live stream method, we wouldn't run into that issue. So those are some of the cons, but the pros of doing it this way are really getting to connect with our community live every week. There's just such this special feeling. I see familiar names pop up every week. I feel like I'm really getting to know our community, but it also makes me feel like I can respond. We can get a question and then next week I can answer it. I don't have to wait 2 months for the next batch or figure out how it perfectly fits into our long-term strategy. Makes me feel a little bit more creative with it. So I really, really like that. I also was already recording the podcast with video. So teaching it live only streamlined my process more because it removed any over editing I was doing to myself. If you've ever recorded a podcast or a video and you start and stop and pause and redo it, doing this live really removes that option, which is good for me. So I like being able to just show up and teach, and I'm already doing it on video anyways. So the process on my end isn't that much different. It's only faster. I also feel like we're getting big bang for our buck. Like I was already recording it with video. Now I get to do it live and help people in a little bit more of an immediate way without there being a delay of 2 or 3 weeks. And then we're catching people on a lot of different platforms. And overall, the biggest thing I love about doing the weekly live show and why we're going to be even going into all of this detail is because it makes me feel so much more comfortable going live for other reasons. So I do a lot of coaching live, but doing a Zoom coaching call is very different than doing a live stream on Instagram or on Facebook or doing live workshops. And I noticed that as soon as we started doing this weekly live show, it made it a lot easier for me to show up live in other areas without as much, anxiety or butterflies. So those are some of the pros and cons of doing this method. We're about to transition into the nitty-gritty workflow. But before we do, Sam, do you have any other thoughts on like cons or pros of doing it this way versus batching like we used to?
Yeah, I think that this process just for our team in general is a lot easier. Like you were saying, it seems, almost like less intimidating just to show up live because you're used to that. That's how you coach your clients and everything. So, and I love the fact that we get people on and like almost with us while you're recording the podcast live. It just feels very like comfortable that way, and like seeing you that way. Also kind of having like those people support you before you actually start recording the podcast. And then after you kind of take your big breath and then everybody's chiming in the comments. So I love that part of it. And I just think that we've like really hit a stride with the podcast since you started recording it live within our Facebook pages and groups. So it might be different for other people, but once you find like a method that works for your team, you just got to stick with it.
Yeah, I love that. Such a good point. Consistency is key. So let's get nitty gritty. So I'll keep talking just for a couple more minutes and then I'll pass it off to you, Sam. But I kick off the content process because it starts with the live stream. So phase one, if you will, of our content process is me going live on a Thursday usually. So before I go live, usually that morning, I take 15 to 30 minutes to outline that episode if I haven't done that already. So I'll spend, maybe 30 minutes outlining. We then do the live stream. Usually most of our episodes are 30 minutes or less. We have had a few that go longer, but it's about 30 minutes or less to go live. And then right afterwards, I write the email. Because for where our team is at, I still really like to write our weekly newsletters. I like to craft a story around that recording or that live stream. So it feels really good and natural for me to do the live stream and then immediately after write a blurb of what's going to eventually go into our weekly newsletter. So that way Sam has both of those pieces to use as she takes on her part of the content process. So phase one is all me, and it's just those three things. And overall that takes an hour and a half at most total. So it's very, very efficient for me. It takes an hour and a half at most once a week, totally sustainable and scalable for us. So that's my part. Sam, why don't you guide us through the rest of the process?
Yeah, so I love that Megan just gets to like do her part quickly and then go on to serving our clients. So where I take over is pretty much after Megan goes live, I'll go in and organize these videos. Like we said, we record these within our Facebook page and our Facebook group. So they need to be organized so everyone within our community can easily find them if they want to go back and watch them again, or if they want to reference them in any way. So organizing all of that takes about 15 minutes. I'll put on our YouTube thumbnail on the business page, things like that, just making it look pretty and easy to find. Then we move into the third phase of editing the YouTube video, editing the audio. So it's really easy for us since our process is so simple. I just edit the video, I export the video, and then I extract the audio and export that as well. So that's been really nice for our process. And it just makes it easy to kind of like edit the video and audio all in one, and it makes it a lot faster. And while I'm editing and just making sure nothing weird is in the audio or anything like that, I'll sit there as I'm listening and I'll type everything out for our graphic designer, Emily. She's amazing. And I kind of just like brain dump a bunch of ideas, let her know the title of the podcast, of the YouTube video, what needs to go on the thumbnail. Sometimes I might have a really great idea for a graphic to use on our social media. So I'll kind of just brain dump that to Emily, maybe like make up something in Canva that doesn't look so pretty and send it to Emily so she can make it pretty.
I actually
So
want to pause right there too, Sam, because I think this is such a game changer for us as a team where you were able to sit there and take the time to listen back while you're editing, which if any other content creators here know, listening to your own self is very painful. And so having Sam do that, not only for editing is helpful, but she really is sitting there strategizing what we could use on social media to make this information easier to digest. So not only promotional graphics, but if you follow us on Instagram, you may have seen cute infographics and visual aids and even quote graphics. Those are all Sam's doing. So as Sam is listening to the episode, she made it sound very casual, but she's literally like coming up with ideas for like, oh, this should be a pie chart and it should have these 3 pieces. And it allows us to really repurpose beyond one single promotional post on Instagram and actually repurpose it as independent educational content. So we had a graphic recently go live about, the 3 things side hustlers should focus on. And it's a multiple slide educational infographic that doesn't require someone to go listen to the podcast to get value out of it, but it came from the podcast. So I think that's the next level of repurposing that's been so valuable for us and helpful for our community, is that it's not just the promo graphic. It is truly pulling out inspirational and educational content and collaborating with our designer on how to make that work. So just want to hype you up a little bit more, Sam, that like that has been such a cool part of the process that if you are listening and you have a VA who's maybe helping you create one single promotional graphic, could they go one step further and maybe strategize an infographic or a little list or a quote graphic, or go that one next step so that you can get more than one Instagram post out of each piece of content? We get like 3 at least out of each episode, I feel like. So you do such a good job with that.
Thank you. If anyone was wanting like some advice on how to do that, pretty much as a team, like if we see anything on social media that we're like, oh, we could make something like that, kind of just take inspiration from it. Also just kind of trying to visualize whatever Megan's teaching or whatever topic we're talking about, and how can we put that into something visual, because the podcast is audio, we have the YouTube video, but having those like visual graphics are another way that we can reach new clients or teach people in another way. So that's kind of like how we are able to like go down that road with an extra place of repurposing within the graphics. So pretty much once we have everything edited and sent over to the graphic designer, then I'll get the graphics back from her, and then we move into phase 4 where I can actually start uploading everything. So I upload and optimize the YouTube video, make sure we have good keywords in there and tags. Also making sure our descriptions follow our template, and where, if anyone clicks in the description, they can go somewhere else and read a blog or another previous podcast. I also upload and optimize to Buzzsprout, which is where it pretty much sends it out to all the platforms for the podcast. Write and upload the blog into Squarespace, and we connect the YouTube video and the podcast in there so people can choose, do they want to go the visual route or just listen to the audio, maybe download it to their phone if they want to. What's cool about getting the blog together is it's a little bit different in terms of writing that portion of the blog, because I try and pull out the conversational parts of Megan recording the podcast and not so much like reiterating all of the educational stuff in there. I try and just really pull in what's going to entice people to listen to the podcast or watch the YouTube video, and not so much like, here's, 3 things, like we were saying before, 3 things for this topic, because then they're just going to read the blog and they're not going to actually listen and get to hear it. Learning by hearing Megan's voice is very different. So I definitely try and emphasize that in the blog to push people to those other platforms.
And Sam, sorry to interrupt you. I do want to clarify, because we've done this a few different ways, and I know people have asked us this before. Currently, we're doing a little bit more of a show notes style blog post. So Sam is writing a couple of introductory paragraphs, like she was saying, to give context and entice people. And then we're really doing some bullet points to give people an idea of what they're going to learn. But we're not currently doing like a full written out blog post to accompany everything. And that was an intentional decision decision we made to simplify our process because we didn't want to necessarily invest any more time into the content to have the fully written blog post. I could definitely see us doing that eventually, again, as we have more team support or more resources to put into our content. But it's a great example of something we could be doing, but that we've chosen to simplify so that it's still on our website. We're still getting SEO juice from when people are searching for this. We're still showing up in the results, but we're not necessarily going that, maximum route we could be with a fully fleshed out written blog post. So those are the type of decisions for those of you listening who maybe don't have as much resources to put into your own content process. That's the type of thought process you want to have. I could do X and maybe I have this vision for doing it this way, but I don't have to start there right now. I can simplify, I can streamline and start at a little bit more of a simpler process, knowing that you always have the capacity to do more as your team and business grows. So we're still making those decisions and simplifying as much as possible. And we've chosen to keep the blog simple so that Sam can put that energy instead into more things like Instagram and the social media marketing of it instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And pretty much once everything's ready and together for YouTube, the podcast through Buzzsprout, and then through the blog, I can move on and pretty much take a summary of anything that I wrote for those and plug those into our social media posts. So that's Instagram, letting our Facebook communities know that we have a new podcast going up, and I schedule those using Planoly and SmarterQueue. We like those ones because SmarterQueue is great for scheduling. Planoly is great to see the layout of the feed, but also schedule it as well, and set up all of those nice automations for like locations and first comments and things like that. Then once I'm done with the social media posting, I move on to drafting the email into Kartra, which is a platform that we use to email, and making sure the layout is in there, all the links to click to if they want to watch the YouTube video or listen to the podcast. So pretty much in the batching process for just getting everything on those platforms, that's it. It's a lot, but it's within about 5 or 6 platforms. So it's really nice having those platforms to automate and kind of schedule everything and get it in there. Then after that, I send Megan either a no or let her know in Asana that everything's ready to be reviewed and approved. Megan is really awesome. If I ever, miss a link on an email or maybe like mislabel something, Megan always catches it. So we love step 5 because it keeps us in check and makes sure that nobody's clicking a bad link or a link from the episode the week before. So everything's always ready for you guys to quickly consume.
Yeah, I mean, no one's perfect. We're all humans. And I think part of my former, technical VA background is like, you can't publish something with only one set of eyes on it if you have multiple eyes available to you. So this really helped me as the delegation process as well. So if any of you have delegated before and really struggled to let go of control, or you still have a really strong preference for quality control, there's always an element of releasing that has to happen in the delegation process. But I have found that what is really nice is making it as simple as possible. So instead of having like 6 or 7 different approvals at every step of the way for Sam, like I'm not approving the graphic ideas and like every single step, I'm not slowing her down with multiple approvals. Instead, we just have this one day, Thursday. So on Thursdays are my content day. I'm like approving last week's, recording this week's. So it's really simple for me to kind of have that frame of mind. I'm reviewing everything. So all of the work Sam has done, the graphics Emily has done, I just do one sweep of everything, let her know if I do see any tweaks, if I have any feedback. And it's really, really simple. It takes me way less than 30 minutes. I think at the very beginning, because like with any new team member, there is always a little bit more feedback when you're first starting to work with them. So I do think at the beginning of this process, there was more feedback on the blog post copy or links or formatting, but we've totally nailed that down now. So sometimes I just have no feedback. I'm like, looks great. And other times like I catch a link or something like that, which is totally fine. So, so I just jump in on Thursdays to work on our content, and it's still in very small, manageable doses.
Mm-hmm. I like that you had mentioned it's been a process because I almost forgot. I remember when we first started working together and there would be like a whole long list of things to change. And I'm like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get this? But now it's like, it's so easy. It's okay, one thing here, one thing here. And we really have, it's like our process solidified. So it's funny to kind of reflect back on that.
Oh,
And good for other
how far
people to
we've
know.
come in a couple of
Yes.
months. Yeah. I mean, feedback is so normal in any type of process. And I think part of it was also creating our own new process because
Hmm.
we were doing things differently. So I didn't necessarily have all of my preferences documented. So we were really documenting and creating that together, which is
Hmm.
super normal for there to be more feedback. But yeah, that's like phase 5 is kind of that quick approval and review stage. And then it goes back to Sam for phase 6 and 7.
So for phase 6, that's just where I take any updates or corrections that Megan has, and I put those in, and I schedule everything to go out. So I schedule everything on a Friday, and it goes live on Tuesday. So we can kind of just like leave that episode in that week. Everything's ready to go. And then on Tuesday, that's always our podcast upload day. So I check in the morning to make sure everything went live. We schedule everything really early in the morning. So by the time I wake up and log on my computer, that it's all there for me to view, make sure that everything went up, YouTube video, podcast, blog, social media posts. And then I go in and I do my day of posting tasks. So that's making sure our link tree is ready to go. People can click the link in Megan's Instagram bio, making sure that all the links are good on our social media posts. And then also uploading Instagram stories, making sure that our blog post is ready and everything like that. Pretty much just it's a double check day and just letting everybody know that the podcast and YouTube video went up or they can read the blog or whatever. So that's pretty much it for that whole process. Very long, but definitely worth it.
I know when you say it all out loud, it seems like very lengthy. So if you're listening and you feel overwhelmed, like please know that we didn't always do it this way. We have a lot of resources and help that allow us to have the content process go this way. And also, I think it's slightly simpler than maybe it sounds when you're saying it all out loud. Everything Sam just talked about, what we were breaking down into phases, phase 3, where she's editing through the repurposing, through the approval and the scheduling, all of it happens within 4 or 5 days. And I'm curious, Sam, if you have any idea how long you spend like each week on content. Is there like a range you typically spend?
Yeah, I would say it could be, depending on the length of the episode and all the assets that we need for it, I would say at most ever like 6 hours. But normally I would say like maybe 4 hours would be the most all in total. I really only have 2 heavy lifting days, which is the editing day and then the day where I upload everything into their platforms. But other than that, it's kind of just little tasks here and there. You have one heavy lifting day where you record and you write anything that you need, any of the copy for the email and stuff. So there's really 3 heavy days and the rest are just kind of like here checks and loading and things like that.
Yeah. And my heavy day feels so much lighter than when I was batch recording. I think just because there felt like so much pressure as a former or recovering perfectionist, so much pressure to like pick the right 6 episode topics and the right order. And, recording them when you're just sitting there at your desk, you start to overanalyze everything you're saying. And so to me, that batching process in some ways felt much heavier than what we're doing on a weekly basis for me. So I really enjoyed it. And then as we're wrapping up, just some reminders that, when you're creating content, whether you're doing a process similar to ours, whether you're batching, regardless of the platform or the frequency, I have some just tips on creating content. And the first one is, like I was just talking about, is to ditch perfectionism. Remember that you can create new content about the same topic over and over again. So this isn't your one chance to give 3 productivity tips for entrepreneurs. You can absolutely do it over and over again. You can finesse the positioning. You can change it. You can repeat yourself. Just because you've said it once doesn't mean you can never say it again. So just remember to kind of let go of that perfectionism and stop putting that pressure on yourself to like deliver it perfectly the first time. I think when I was teaching tech in particular and doing technical tutorials like blog posts, tutorials in Squarespace and things like that, I felt like it had to be perfect, like perfectly worded with the perfect graphics. And it was like my one time to teach this. And it really, really slowed me down. So remember to just ditch the perfectionism and the pressure. And then I know I've said this several times, but I just want to drive this home to keep this process simple and make sure it works for you. We have a team, so this process works really well for us, and it's a really high return on investment for us. We see the results we want to from this current method, but we're always flexible and we're always experimenting. So if we stop enjoying the live stream as like a way to record the podcast, then we'll shift it. If we aren't seeing the results we want or the impact we want, we'll try something else. And so always remember that, keep it simple, but also find what works for you. Make sure it's getting you the outcomes you want. And if at any point it stops serving you or your community, it's okay to change how you're delivering content. Whether you have a VA yet or not, delegate tasks around your content creation as soon as humanly possible. So if you have a virtual assistant and you're not letting them help you with some of the heavier lifting of your content creation, I would highly recommend delegating that as soon as possible. Or if you need to hire an editor to help you so that you don't have to listen to yourself and edit yourself, I think those things are so helpful because you as the CEO, you as the business owner really should be spending most of your time on revenue generating activities and not stuck in the content creation hamster wheel. And then one thing I always encourage you to do is to make sure that before you sit down to create content or develop your own content creation process is to reconnect with your reason for creating content in the first place. Why are you doing this? What's the desired outcome so that you can then measure if you're achieving that or not? So Sam actually prepared like a list of why we create content and what our outcomes are. So Sam, do you want to read them out loud?
Yeah. So our big goal is driving traffic to the podcast or our YouTube video. One of the things I always think of when I'm trying to create content is we don't want to create any dead ends. We always want to lead them somewhere where we can get them watching some sort of content, really draw them into our community or collect an email, something like that. So we really like pushing people towards the podcast or YouTube video so they can see all of Megan's magic. And then we also like to provide that free value to our audience where they can learn, where they can feel welcome and things like that. So we really love just like educating people. And that's also how we can build a tighter knit community later on within our programs and things like that. We also do this to build authority around Megan and her brand. I've said this multiple times, but creating that community is so important to creating a company and a brand that is going to have success long-term. We also use this to drive traffic to our workshops or events. We hosted a workshop series a couple weeks ago. So our podcast and YouTube video really helped us pull people in to that workshop, and it was a huge success. So I'm super excited that we have this as our lead generation. And then also Megan gets to spend way more time in her zone of genius. She gets to build our curriculum for the company and really be able to spend that time talking to our clients, checking in with our clients, and also connect to even more people by using these platforms to repurpose and reach more people. And then I don't know if this last point was for me, but you also don't need that like expensive setup or fancy production. If you look back in Megan's YouTube videos, they're like set up really nice and there's nice lighting and everything. You still have nice lighting and a nice setup, but it's not as formal anymore. So I think that's really cool. And I think it's more real because it's like, people want that authenticity with entrepreneurs and business owners. And I think you really put that forward with just how you say, take fast and imperfect action. And this is just like an example of it. And you do it every single week and you just show up like, hey, this is what works for me. This is easy. And, I still get the job done and I still help people.
Yeah, I definitely, when I first started YouTube, fell into the trap of having the perfect backdrop and like having the great camera with the like fancy lens to get a blurry background. And that was cool, but also complicated the whole process. And so I went back to the webcam, which is what we do now. So it's just another example of simplifying things. You don't need to have anything crazy to start creating content that's super valuable for your community and helps you achieve those desired outcomes. So hopefully this was helpful. I have so much fun having you on, Sam. Do you have any last notes about our content process or anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I guess I do a few things. Just that, getting that consistency going. If you can have a team help you with getting your content out, content at the end of the day is what's going to drive leads and drive sales into your business. And that's just like, content is the bloodline of your business. So if you don't have a process for it, or if it's not a huge focus of yours, it should be, in my opinion. And it's really going to take your business to the next level if you can show up online and build that authority through your content.
I love that. And I'm definitely always an advocate for keeping it simple, making sure it works for you, but especially for those of you who are building your business who don't already have this huge volume of leads or a giant community somewhere, then content is the best way to really establish your expertise and start to build that community. I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there who have been around, who have lots of content already created, really can stop creating as much content because they have this great database of content already that they can leverage and share and repurpose. That's amazing. But don't feel like you have to start modeling that. I think everyone kind of starts by doing the content to really establish themselves in their expertise. And I think creating content is a great way to practice teaching, to understand what your actual opinions and beliefs are about what you do, to share them and start to use your voice in a way that can really help other people. So we love content marketing over here, but I don't want it to be too consuming. So we're always simplifying it and keeping it scalable. So thank you again so much, Sam, for being here. And thank you for listening. Whether you joined us live or you're listening to this on the podcast or YouTube, we would love to hear from you. Let us know what you enjoyed about this. If you had any big takeaways, feel free to tag us on Instagram stories so that we can see what you liked the most. And we have a few different ways where we can get to know you better and support you. So if you're not already in our free Facebook community, the Empowered Entrepreneurs community, we would love to have you. This is our free Facebook group. We do these live streams in that Facebook group every week. And we're also in there every single day, engaging with you, answering your questions, and helping you become an empowered entrepreneur. And also just geeking out over our favorite topics like productivity, time management, goal setting, planning, business growth mindset, and all of those fun topics. So go to meganmins.com/community to go ahead and request to join our free Facebook group. And we would love to also support you to a higher level. So if you are looking for coaching and really good accountability and support and curriculum as you grow your business, as you take it to the next level, we would love to support you inside of our 12-month program, Empowered CEO. So you can go to meganmins.com/apply to learn more about the program, see if it's a good fit for you, and apply so that we can learn more about you and also let you know if it's a good fit. And if so, we'll send you even more information. So we would love to work with you. And you can go to meganmins.com/apply to learn more. So thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week on the podcast or on the live stream, wherever you decide to join us. And I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you later. Thank you for listening to the Productive Life Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would share your biggest takeaway on your Instagram stories or wherever you hang out. This helps me understand what you find the most helpful so that I can make more episodes and resources like this. If this podcast has helped you at all, please take just 1 minute to leave a review on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about the Productive Life Podcast with others who may enjoy it. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get the latest episodes sent to you directly. To learn how to work with me one-on-one or get instant access to freebies, trainings, templates, workshops, and more, be sure to go to meganmins.com right now. I'll see you in the next episode.